and as much as possible, never seeing Jira again, not having to write a document ever, because I think that's such a waste of talent. And so I don't think product manager is particularly not gonna be writing stories, writing PRDs, translating that into tasks. I think it is distilling information. I think it is strategizing. And I think it is curating context.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Accelerate AI, brought to you by Future AGI. Today I'm excited to chat with Jorge, the founder and CEO at Zentrix. Jorge has been wearing multiple hats, both as an AI professor, AI practitioner. He has helped countless startups from Fortune 500 companies to early stage startup. He has created cutting edge AI solutions. Jorge, first of all, really great to have you over here. Before we deep dive into it, could you tell us, our viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me, Nikhil, as well. As you were saying, it's been a lifetime in AI already. It's true that the field has changed a lot, and the type of AI that we did 10 years ago is not the same type that we do today. To give you just a quick example of that, 10 years ago, we had to not use the word AI when we were selling chatbots to clients because it would scare them away thinking that the AI could do something bad for the users. Whilst today, when it actually can say something bad, clients are demanding that they use AI for their support. So life has given a few turns, and definitely I would love to share some of these thoughts with you and your audience.
Yeah, really amazing. Jorge, thanks for coming. So I think, first of all, I want to know, you have done, from startups, Fortune 500 companies, you have been an AI professor, so how has moving between building and teaching AI shaped your perspective to, how to use it effectively?
There are, I think, two sides to that. The effect that the work in private industry has on academia and the effect that academia has on private industry. And I think it's a good loop because working with private organizations and in an environment where you need to have clear value in order to have a surviving business helps you ground yourself in reality. If you're only in academia, I think very often we land on things that are great theoretically, but do not actually work in practice. And that is also not what students love to get, no? Students can hear hand waving, a mile away as well. But from academia, we also can get quite a lot, which is how to use a good scientific method to approach problems, business problems. So the two things that I maybe would highlight the most is bringing the rigor of academia to private work and bringing the usefulness and practicality of private industry into academia, which benefits students greatly, because they're able to not just learn about, abstract concepts, but rather all the way from the theory of those concepts to the practicality of how do you use them in a real scenario.
Yeah. I think you said like one important thing. So when you're in academics, we focus on academics. We might focus on research, few things. But when we are in an industry, you have to focus on really practical stuff, right? So has that how has that influenced your approach of developing, let's say, an AI product, AI solution?
I would say it's even more impactful in AI probably than other industries, because the rigor that the solutions don't have, you have to provide. Let me open that up a bit, which is, you know about these concepts, and a lot of the audience will as well, but we know that if we're developing a system based on generative AI, where most of the core intelligence is non-deterministic or probabilistic, you need to have the measures of how well things are going. And those are based on data, on probability, on a number of evaluations, on how are guardrails, being defined and respected. What is the latent space? Is the latent space of your retrievable semantic data, cohesive, complete, and continuous? those questions are academic, but they serve us to create a real, useful, repeatable scenario for a business case. And so I think in generative AI is particularly interesting. So that's a very good question. Have you seen other areas that maybe could be affected as well, from your experience as well working in the space?
Yeah, I think probably all the areas has been affected by AI, right? Maybe the coders are affected a lot, right? Designers we have seen, so you can design very effectively. Even marketers, even sales guys. I would say like everyone probably has been affected. I won't say like affected, but they have been empowered.
Impacted.
Right? Yeah,
Definitely.
maybe empowered because yeah. So now, for example, when we, the best tool I like is deep research, right? Previously, I have to spend, maybe 3-4 hours to researching about a concept, about something, maybe researching about a company,
A
researching about a
person
concept.
contact.
Yeah. So now I have to like just write few things, and I have a very long report ready, which I've like manually gone through and researched. So yeah, I think researching and everything is it's really become very empowered, and long gone the days where we have to Google. I actually rarely Google nowadays. Probably if not getting a particular answer, then I have to go back where these tools are not up to that power where they're able to give me all the things. Then I go back and do that.
Yeah, for me the delta is I still Google only if I'm looking for a specific asset. But if I'm researching, is of course Perplexity, Deep Research, Grok, Reddit Answers is pretty good. It's one of my more recent discoveries that I like quite a lot, because there's nothing better than Reddit now right now for googling. So if you have it inside. But yeah, I agree completely. That's one of the best use cases, particularly for agents. We can talk about that more too. But yeah, thank you. Mhm.
What is your favorite tool to every day? Let's say as a PM or something.
Well, I mean, my absolute favorite piece of software is Cursor, with difference. I felt Cursor changed the way that I approach building. I liked a lot of others in that space, V0, Bolt, Replit, Magic Patterns, etc. But Cursor was the first one also that I found on this space after GitHub Copilot, which was nice, but Cursor was a new paradigm. And for me, I've never been an amazing software engineer. I mean, I've been a programmer and I'm an engineer by trade. So I am very good at systems, but not that good at the syntax. I never learned React, actually. And I still don't think that I have, but I have a whole front end running on it. And that is the magic that, that it's often said, particularly in product management, at the very early stage, that you want to make the user feel like the hero. You want the user to be the champion. And that is what Cursor did for me. It made me feel like a little bit of a hero, because I was able to do things that I didn't consider I would be able to do without years of pre-work. And so probably that one, yeah. Even if it's not like on the same line of what we're talking about, but it does connect to other tools. It does do search. You can index documentations and other things that you may want to have. And now with the MCP connection, is just all powerful.
So now as a PM, let's say, what's the area that you want to be, let's say, redefined with AI, that you think, what I've been, I want to change this, or, one area that you want still like it needs a lot of work, because, we have been seeing there are a lot of tools in kind of coding, right? But if you see for other, like for designing, my team still, goes on Figma designs, reinvent the things for designing for AI. For PM, we have to still write very detailed PRD. It's still not there. So what are the few things, tools that you think that you might have that would have done the magic?
Before going to the ones that I already know and love, there was just one announced today, Google for user interface design, that I need to check out. So I was checking on my phone for the URL because I do need to test that one today, and it looks pretty juicy. Figma recently also released their own like dev mode builder, like Bolt or Lovable. It's still on limited access, so I've also not been able to test that one, but it's promising, no, particularly with the deep integration with Figma. But going back to your question, the original one of like, what are the two areas where I see like product work particularly, or as a bigger scope than just product managers, being easy to augment or automate, and those areas that I don't think would be automated or augmented in the short term. To start with the first one, which is I think quite easier too. I think this is something that I align quite a bit with how people like Marty Kagan talk about this. It really requires that you understand what the extent of product work is. Because product work is not what is on those books, and it's also not only what we see in every company. Product management is a huge spectrum of responsibilities, and it's probably the role and the area that has the most hats, that has to interact with the most different type of stakeholders. And so it changes company by company. But there is an area that I for sure know that is the closest to the chopping block, which is Scrum Mastering, product owning, the project management. So many product managers complain that too much of their day is spent doing menial drudge, manual work that is moving a Jira from here to here, reviewing comments on a requirements doc, ensuring that they scour Jira to find why something is not being shipped, to then report in a couple of Slack messages. A lot of this work is urgent, but not meaningful. It doesn't move the needle long term. And so I think that is really where the most value of AI would be today for product. We shouldn't use AI to make decisions for us, but we should use AI to help us make decisions well and faster. And so on all of that, breaking down of work, defining requirements, reviewing comments, helping me negotiate, let's say, between this feedback from engineering, where they say I should reduce the scope, and this feedback from executives, where they say I should grow scope. And understanding, helping me find that middle ground based on that ground truth that is the requirements document, from there writing stories, sinking that into individual tasks for Jira. That's really where I see the most value in the short term, at least. And I do think, and this is the only thing on the other side that at least I would like to leave everybody with, is that I think that as development becomes more commoditized, and mind me, it's development, not engineering. We still need architects and engineers making system decisions, but code itself becomes commoditized. Product management becomes both the new bottleneck and the big differentiator between companies. So a company will not be differentiated anymore by how many features, how many integrations it has on the market, but rather how well and effectively they both understood the user problem and solved it with their solution. So my phrase for everybody would be that product thinking is the skill of the future. And so it's probably the one that survives the longest and the one that you want to nurture for, being a very good, effective worker in a software product engineering organization.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So I think you right now said a lot of things. So let me help digest, right? So AI is doing, let's say taking data from here and there, making your workflow simple, helping you be, let's say 10x PM, managing a lot of work, where your majority of your task is going, right? But still, where do you think the human touch lies, right? Because a lot of times, if you see product managers is just managing people, right? Engineering, architecture, maybe in the sales team, marketing team, getting the things out there, right? So where do you think will there be a line right? And if there will be, where do you think like that will lie in terms of having human touch, where the cross-functional team are talking, and yeah.
I think the line is close to the human. So there are tasks that like empathy, to skills like empathy to understand what a human feels, that are the important skills. That empathy applies to both managing a stakeholder and understanding a user's problem, right? And so I generally think that the closer we are to human nature, the more important and long term those skills are. And so even if for example, I said that, a system architect would survive longer than a developer, I do think that the system architect that survives better is the one that can actually learn how to understand the business requirements and translate those into an effective system. No, not only a technical master whiz that could do anything but doesn't understand how that translates into business. And so problem framing, understanding really from the pain points the user talk about, what is the real why behind everything, as well as arbitraging, negotiating, being the middleman between different incentives and different interests, that be the users, stakeholders, engineering, etc. We may get help from AI to help us think through things, but the ones that can really connect with a decision, that can really make an argument, is still and will for a long time be a human. And there's one last one that I don't love it, but it's true. And I think is that, particularly from executives' positions, it's like you want to have a head that will roll if something doesn't go right, right? You don't want to just blame your bad product decisions on an AI agent. You want to have somebody that is responsible. And of course, it's not only the negative, you also want to have somebody to reward, somebody to applaud, particularly for the whole morale of the company. But I think everywhere where we will want to have a responsible, either to blame or to reward, or to grow, it's areas where we would also want to have a huge human touch.
So currently, how, let's say, product managers, even like in orgs, you have worked with a lot of Fortune 500 customers, enterprise customers. How are they seeing the ROI coming from AI, right? Because in terms of AI seems very good. I think in the early phase of Gen AI revolution, we've seen like every company wanted to have a Gen AI product, right? Even though and they have funds for that. So how has that transition now, from putting money into it? Are they seeing early ROIs? They are asking for ROIs for those products, and how the matrix for what product managers now looks like.
Yeah, I will separate that just to talk generally about the investments in AI, and then we can talk more about product as well, because I think that you will also know a good part of this answer. No, it's that during the first couple of years, particularly, which we're just ending now, of Gen AI's boom, investments were so misguided, so misguided. There were no problem definition. It was just like, we need AI, we want AI, and even more than that, people wanted GenAI. During that time, I had a services company. No, I was working with companies to help them release chat with your data type solutions, narrow workflows. It was the start of like very narrow agents as well. It was pretty common that if you proposed a solution to a problem that did not imply GenAI, that for example you were using a prediction, a routing, classification algorithm of some other type, they would be like, "Oh, this is great, but it doesn't have. How do you use OpenAI here? How do you use GPT?" It's like, no, we don't need to. It's 10 times more expensive and more slow. Why would you want? Oh, because the executive team wants to use. And so, just to get that out of the way, there was so much misguided investment. The stat that I know from, I think it was McKinsey or one of these ones, is that 80% of Gen AI projects did not get to production, which is a huge amount. Like, if you consider that in comparison with IT in general. And then there's a bigger problem here, which is that traditional IT projects have a large initial investment, but then the maintenance is relatively low. It's the cost goes very much like this, no? In Gen AI projects, even more than AI in general, the project is cost is kind of linear, both because usage costs way more and because maintenance is way more complicated. It's not just fixing a bug. It's making sure that this new update of the model still responds well to those prompts, is running evaluations constantly, is ensuring that those libraries that now are quite finicky, don't break on the next update. That'd be, LangChain or Llama Index, which if you started at the beginning of those libraries, none of your projects will work today because they've changed completely how they're, what used to be one library now is the core library plus the other 7 libraries on top of it. And so, and the models that OpenAI is all the time deprecating models. GPT-4.5, which was amazing for creative writing, now is gone or nearly gone. I think it's in a month or something. Ada and other smaller models that you would have used in before 23 also gone. So it's much more costly to maintain. So it's not even just getting them to production, but the cost of making them run is not like traditional IT projects. And companies did these investments as if they were, which creates a lot of surprises. Now, to fast forward to today, I do think companies have educated themselves quite a bit, sometimes because of pain. Once you see that your project drove this much loss on the company this year, either you're fired or, you learn. No? And if you're fired, the person that comes after you is warned that happened to the previous person. So I do think that the companies are much more educated now. And the only problem that I see is that the industry keeps making up buzzwords and ways to bring you the FOMO, to make you think that you need to move today on everything. No? And I think I will recommend to companies a similar thing that you probably do, which is that, don't focus on the technology. The technology is not the outcome. The outcome is the problem. It really doesn't matter how you solve it. Important thing is to find the cheapest, fastest set of technology or system built on top of that technology that allows you to solve that problem effectively and consistently, and not that you use AI. And I think we will also see a bit of a counter trend in some ways during these years. AI's impact is undeniable, so every company will end up using it. It's just that they may want to use it in a much less black boxy way, very narrow, very deterministic as much as possible, and only solving real problems, which, I know that because of your work as well, you're very familiar with this type of conversations. Have you seen any other notes, similar to what I've mentioned, either a key example or something that you would add to this?
I think, yeah, the same thing has happened. So even we've, there were a few companies who, created very fancy demos that were working with the internal team, and they gave to the customer. They like, this is not good, right? When they deploy to the customers, it's not good. It's not performing the way that they want. So I think it's absolutely correct. So the cost of creating all these applications might be super low, but the real things comes in when you have to create maybe a reliable app which covers maybe 99% of the cases that you have, and also adopts with user queries. Let's say, as you said, like running evals continuously, knowing where it went wrong, and then continuously. So there, that, as you said, like linear cost, there is a constant upgradation that is required when new models comes in. It's a really long process to update your pipeline, to test your prompts again and everything. I think same thing. But we have seen like, okay, this has been there, but companies are taking really bold bets, because what we have seen is companies are now reimagining all the things that they have with GenAI something, right? Even like having a really simple search that of the product, just applying filters that they have, right? So just type what you have in your mind, and it will apply those filters. Really basic stuff. Or from this to very complicated use cases where you have something called text to SQL, where it will get the time series data do some type of analysis of it, create you fancy dashboards. And people think like in coming world, maybe the dashboards will be dead because you'll have just this chat interface which will do everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was even tried before GenAI. I worked with a couple of companies back in the day that they did natural language to data. It's just that instead of GenAI interpreting or creating a SQL query, they used name entity recognition. So, and we even did this in a couple of companies ago in Inventa for like airlines, so that you could search like, I want a flight in Christmas to Dubai. And you understand Christmas is 24th of December. Dubai is DUB. Madrid is the origin, MAD. So I think that it is a good wake up call. And the thing that you mentioned, I think is very important. At the very least, it is making companies rethink their processes. And that is actually a positive thing.
I think one of the things that we have worked on pre-gen AI chatbots as well. Right now, the chatbots have changed completely from, move to drag, agentic, use cases now where you can embed a lot of things into it. But what are the lessons that you have learned from your pre-agentic era where you were using entity recognitions, maybe Rasa frameworks, few things like that? And what are the key, fundamentals that you think like still applies? And like still, what should modern product teams and like avoid repeating them? What are the mistakes that that you have seen that they can avoid?
It may seem pretty obvious, but the real one is measure outcomes. Because when we had intent-based chatbot systems, it was quite easy. Like I could tell you exactly how many number of hits did I get to this FAQ, or to this flow, decision tree, etc., to this tool. Because even back then, we already had transactional chatbots. Like if you got to the point of like tracking your shipment with, a client was UPS for a while too. And so it will track, it will then take your ID, send it to the API, fetch the details of like, this is coming in 3 weeks, show it to you in a nice UI, no? So it still did capabilities that today are called as agentic, and really it can just be a couple of API calls, no? And recognizing with that regex or some other better NER, the input of the user. So going back to the recommendation, measure. In GenAI, this is particularly difficult. Two different things that are difficult. One, the answers are often, particularly if you use RAG, a mix of different knowledge sources. So you don't deterministically know that the answer that the chatbot gave to the user is based on this specific chunk or piece of information. You know that the chatbot saw these 10 chunks in context, but you don't know deterministically which ones it based the answer off. It's difficult to know what content is working and not. So you need to have a very good pipeline to identify where are the semantic holes in the base of knowledge, in the knowledge base. Like, this is something that I have worked with a lot of companies to improve. And I think that particularly the work that you guys do as well could be quite related to this. It's that I help them understand that the latent space of documentation is one of the key aspects of performance, particularly for a support type chatbot that is based on GenAI. You need to understand that the space of semantic options where all of your content is placed is really you should really measure that academically, going back to those ideas where we need to understand, are you covering the whole space of possibilities? Is it continuous? So if the question of the user lands here, you always have a coherent set of answers to show, and that it understands and is adapted to your lexems, to your vocabulary. That can be done in multiple ways. As you know, you can either like fine tune the model that you're using for embeddings so that it understands more like your knowledge, the synonyms in your work, etc. Or it can be done more brute force with like semantic expansion, that every time that you receive a query from the user, you multiply it by 5 with another LLM that is transforming that query into the query that makes sense for us. Then I make the search with that, bring back the results, re-rank them, show that to the LLM uses that for the answer. And the whole other aspect of this, that is the source material, no, is the measure part of outcomes. Understand what is the possible correlation between chunks used and success failure of the interaction. What does success look like? How do you measure it? Is it that the user doesn't return to the chatbot, which is usually called deflection? Or is it a more clear success metric, like did they say thank you? Do we have another LLM as a judge evaluating the conversation and saying like, yes, this was resolved, this was a good answer? Having that deterministic set of metrics for how well did my chatbot do today is way more difficult now with GenAI than it was with intent-based, flow-based chatbots that did intent matching, classification, etc. You gotta do the work on that part.
So what are few of the technologies that you think like RAG still haven't solved? For example, still gets multiple data out there. It still has problem as you said, right? So it's a matter of let's say solving all those things. But what do you think like it's the next step in RAG or in chatbots that you're observing?
Mm-hmm. I think it's not a scientific upgrade, and I also don't think it's a level change. I do think it's more about the systems that we build and how we build them, because you can do RAG better. RAG as a concept is very old. Like if I told you that we were using RAG in 2015 in Inventa, it wouldn't match to like most people's understanding, but we called it federated search. We were using, a semantic search that then fed into a chatbot that used it to generate an answer. It's just that it didn't use the same models that we use today. So even in these 10 years, it has had amazing improvement. Now, the thing that I think will make this notably better is having those abilities by default. RAG alone, naive RAG, as it's usually called, it's great for a demo. It's not great for a production use case nearly ever. You need to have a purpose-built RAG or an adaptive RAG. So something that really can understand your context, your language, your semantic space. Like for example, a client wanted to have an assistant this is from my previous company, from Integrate, not from Zentrix. They wanted to have a chat with your data type solution to be able to understand and parse non-financial documentation, particularly for ESG comparison between companies. So how is this company comparing their sustainability efforts to this other company? The language that you use for ESG is so precise that what you needed basically was translation layers to both go from document to, information that you want to have semantically indexed, and also a translation layer for the user question to the questions that I would use to search on that index. And then what you do is you use that for searching, but then what you surface to the chatbot for the answer is the actual original chunks, that came from the document. So it is having that translation layer, and I will just leave it at that because that translation layer can have many sides. It can be translating to something that is easier to handle by an LLM, could be translating to something that is semantically easier to parse and create a continuous space for. And it may also be understanding what type of users you have and translating for each user differently. So if you have a system like ChatGPT that everybody can use, maybe you want to do a first layer of like, what type of thing this user is asking about? Where do they come from? And then you say like, okay, what type of translation we need to do semantically so that this does a good search, Typical, very silly example that I use in classes often for semantic expansion is that if I ask you the question to an LLM, imagine a financial LLM, and I ask like, which company is bigger, NVIDIA or Microsoft? Easy example, And an LLM would probably know off the bat, But the real good thing to do is not to send that question to an embedding space and find the closest matching, because you will have quite the varied results from one and the other, and they may not even actually give you the size. The right thing to do is to divide that in two questions. One question that is how big is NVIDIA, how big is Microsoft, and then just compare the numbers. And then it's an easy problem to solve. And so similarly, I think purpose-built RAG beats naive RAG. And we are learning about a lot of these techniques that do the level set for real solutions. So in terms of chatbots, in terms of RAG, I don't think that we will get like a huge technology jump because we haven't got it. Like RAG seems like a whole new thing, but it's just an old thing that we've given a new name and have improved a lot on. And I think that that improvement now will not be so much at the technology level, it would be at the system level.
So, I would say let's talk about some non-technical teams. For example, so what are the mistakes that you are seeing, what are wrong decisions that product teams are doing, or are going wrong when, trying to integrate GenAI into their product? So, we have seen like everyone talking about, I need to integrate or you need to make my product GenAI first, right? So what are the, let's say, loopholes or, things to avoid when trying to do that?
One very important thing is that if that phrase, that say like, we need to have this in a product, comes before you have it in your life, you're not going to do a good job at deciding how to use it, at deciding how to implement it for your users. Because if you're not a user of the technology yourself, if you don't try to implement it on your own work, how are you going to make good decisions of how can others get use of it? So my first recommendation, and Nikhil, I'm of course biased on this because I am building GenAI for product teams, would be to try and see how do you implement it in your own workflows, in your own company. Because you will not necessarily win just by having a GenAI feature, but if you can do your product work, your engineering work at 40% of the cost, of the human cost, that is how you continue winning. You're giving value to your users, not because you have GenAI, but because you have a product that is doing something for them, So just do that more, better, and for that, I encourage product teams, of course, to try tools like ours and other solutions in the market, from those that are, from how to use ChatGPT and Claude better to do your work, to helping your teams get set up with Cursor. I have an unpopular opinion here, that I think that PMs should lose the fear of the IDE, of the code editor, because it is the final frontier. The product manager doesn't need to stop at ideation and solutioning. Like, you can build, and with a little bit of operations or engineering work to help you get set up so that you're working over the real code base, you have a conversation that you can fork with most of the design systems, etc. You can start iterating, prototyping, showing things to users, and getting real data. Experiment for real. Not so much like drawing boards, a Figma file that you show to a customer saying that like, if you clicked here, this report would appear. No, show them. Give them a UI where they click there and the report appears. And so I really think that the first advice, and we can go more into the other side of it, is how to use it for their products. But the first thing is actually breaking it, making it for yourself. Ensuring that you understand where the limits are, how much value it can give you in a complex environment, so that you can then grok how you would use it inside of your product. And then for how to use it inside of your product, it's similar advice as before. No? Don't put the technology first. Is, if anything, one thing that you can do is bring people in a room, everybody from engineering to sales, and start to list use cases that could be possible. There are no bad ideas. Get to a list of 100 things. And then with your product thinking, start to do process of elimination. Take the hatchet out and, take out all of those that are silly, that are too costly, that is not demonstrated that this would add value. And then for the short list that you will end up, make a case. Okay, how would this look like for real? And then for each of those, now you can test that idea with users or build a little prototype, and show to the users, going back to full circle of this, having, a system like Zentrix that can process those 10 ideas for you, generate a few prototypes, show them to users, get data of what would be the most valuable for those users that also has a viability for your business, and then execute on those. Of course, execute is not just that easy, but still, you would have done a lot of the work if you do it like this. if it's an executive that comes to you and just says that we want GenAI in the product, you can come back with something like this. It's just that you do need to make a business case. To an executive, particularly to a stakeholder on the business side, you're going to need to make a business case. What is the ROI of bringing GenAI alone without an idea of how? Potentially hugely negative. But if you can clear a little bit the fog of war, if you can clear the uncertainty of what does that mean for a product, what features, where do we get the value, what would it look to maintain it and improve it, how do we measure success for a solution like that? If you can clear the fog of war, you can really get into a good set of features where you could implement GenAI. And pretty sure that for most companies there are a few.
You said few fundamental things that that are really close to my heart. For example, go and try. So actually, Gen AI product management, probably it's not that different from any product management, because you have to get into the shoes of your users, into the things. You have to try the things by yourself. You have to experience the pain point by yourself, get into that, and then create something with the technology. Not always necessary with that technology, because as you said, it's you don't need to always use Gen AI for the sake of using it. But yeah, I think it's as you said, like it's quite important to understand the pain point, try to use it by yourself, understand how the things works, get your hands dirty into it. Yeah, I think I cannot agree more with on that with you.
Well, I think that we both have done quite a bit of work in this space, and so I think these things become more evident the more work you've done with it, and the more you're exposed to folks that have some requests without knowing how it works, no? Because it has happened to both of us, probably, that you will get somebody saying like, oh, can you just use GenAI for this? It's like, I mean, well, with GenAI and a year of an engineering team, I could. And it would probably be slower and more costly than just doing it manually. So that is something that I wish everybody, had more of a chance to experience by themselves.
Completely agree with you on that. One of the things that it's very uncommon. For example, how do you handle, let's say, transparency and explainability, in your AI? Because if you have seen like, oh, this answer came, but how did it came, right? With the customers, okay, these things came, so that's a trade-off, right? Having and making sure that your customers are not getting something wrong, and it becomes very trustworthy. So what are some frameworks that you guys are using, some architectural designs that you're using to make sure that you're still fast, because these things are not slowing you down. You're shipping things at a very good pace at the same time, but you're making sure that it is transparent, it is explainable, it is trustworthy for your end user as well.
I do think the trade-off of latency versus accuracy, particularly, is real. Transparency, I mean, a lot of it can be done without added latency. The thing that it does consume is real estate. So, it is very magical to send something to the AI and have something happen, no? And that could take just like a little section of your either chat UI or another space of the interface. But then, as you say, what happens when it goes wrong? The user loses complete confidence and trust. Whilst if you do something wrong, but the user can see the path that the AI went through to get to that point, they will trust much more what is happening. Because particularly if they also have levers that they can pull to change what happened, so they can go back and say, I see where it went wrong. It misinterpreted this word that I used, so let me just change it and try again. In terms of, we don't have a specific framework, because I don't think that there's been one that has been popularized, big enough, or that, there's a library or things that really help with this alone, There are things that, there are good examples. And so there are slightly different or added layers the deeper you go into the rabbit hole. So direct LLM interactions or wrappers, relatively easy. The thing that you need to do is show what's going to happen what happened and why, with a little bit of reasoning. If you use like chain of thought, even in your prompting, that is in some way shown in a nice way to the user. No, next level, a retrieval augmented generation or things that have it. You will want to show the snippets that you've used. You will want to show the sources of data. This is similar to the deep research tools that we talked at the very beginning, but even more for chatbots, in my opinion, for a support chatbot, it would be very interesting that if I'm talking to an airline bot and it tells me something, that I understand why, because I may think that the answer is not that sensical, no, but if it gives me the two links of like, oh, this is the baggage FAQ for Europe, I can see, I see where it went wrong, because I said that I'm going to Madrid, but actually because inbound flight, it doesn't apply. So I know that, and the model didn't catch that. So I can, check the AI even as a user, and I will want to do that. And that's on RAG. The other thing with RAG as well that you can do for explainability and transparency is confidence. A lot of people shows only what has been used in the answer. Like you use ChatGPT, for example, deep research, and it would only show you the sources in line of the snippets that it has used. Like, oh, this comes from Reuters, no? But it doesn't show you all of the other things that it has looked at and not considered for the answer. And I think that, for example, that is an important thing. That Perplexity does very well, because Perplexity shows you all of the sources that it has used, the links, the images on one side, and then in line it shows you the things that it uses. And one level further, and I think this is the deepest that we can get today, and we could even go to the academic level of understanding weights, probabilities, etc. But that's rarely useful unless you're serving a technical function. Like if you are an LLM provider, if you are an API for a technical use case, yes, you maybe could get to the top P level probability distributions, things like that. But for agents, one thing that I haven't seen yet done, and I think it's quite important, is showing what the agent has decided not to do as well. So it is already pretty common that if you're using an agent, the agent will show you, okay, I've thought this, I had this interaction with other, like if it's a multi-agent system with other agents, and now I'm going to use this tool. And the right thing whenever you're going to use a tool that is relatively sensitive is, of course, to have a human in the loop that confirms, asks, and reframes, if necessary, how to call that tool. No? But also understanding what other options were there available, I think is something that companies are not doing very well yet. Like, I would like that my agent, like when he tells me like, oh, I'm going to use the calendar to put a meeting there. And like my answer would be like, no, not yet. That I also see the other possible tools or, paths that he could have taken. So I can tell like, no, send a tentative email to this person, which is a different, tool call to confirm the hour before adding it, no? Silly example. But that when I have the option to stop the execution, that it also tells me what other paths and options would have been branches that would have been possible. Maybe with a level of confidence, so that I can really feel like I'm in control. I'm not just a roadblock that is preventing you from action, but rather I am the, I don't know how you call it in English, but the train, you know how the trains have their divergent, lanes? That is where I want to be. I want to be able to decide if you should go here, there, or there, no? Or give a little bit of feedback so that you re-estimate and maybe we're going in that direction. And because I think transparency is not only of what has happened, but also of what could happen. And that's really the winner.
Great thought on this. Yeah. Agents are becoming more and more automated now, but having more control would absolutely might be needed, because there will be so many things. It might ask you, okay, you know what, should I go over this and do that? It's an absolutely very good thought, I would say. Yeah. So one of the things, right? Academia goes very different from practical, things. So how do you think, like, that the companies can engage with, let's say academia to create better solutions for enterprises. What do you think academia should do or industry should do so that they have a better collaboration between each other?
Mhm. Well, I think there's a lot to learn, and I think we talked more about the other side, and this is a good question for the new side, which is how does private industry in general learn from academia or use those models effectively? I mean, there is a big side of this, which is research collaborations and like real partnerships between R&D and universities. But that has been there for a while. I'll focus more on the particular case of what we're talking about today. And I think the key thing that we can learn from academia is the scientific process. And the one thing in the scientific process that I think is key and often overlooked. The scientific process is first observe, then hypothesis, then measure or like create the experiment, and then observe again, right? And the key thing there for me is the first two, is first observe and then hypothesize. And very, very often in private industry, we go straight to hypothesis. We go straight to a solution proposal, no? And this is similar in tone of what we've been talking for most of this hour, that you should take a moment to see what's out there, to observe users doing their work, to observe what's possible in models today. And so understand that because we're moving to a world, particularly in software development generally, where things are way less deterministic, that we need to think of it as if we were doing always an experiment. What's the best way to run experiments? The scientific method. Start with observation, formulate clear hypotheses, then do the experiment. Don't do an experiment to observe with a pre-existing hypothesis, because that breaks the model completely. You may be testing a completely wrong thing. And so, in that sense, the best thing to learn from academia right now is how to deal with uncertainty, which is what academia is best at. Research is the definition of going from uncertainty to certainty, right? So, let's use the tried and true methods, that we have learned for hundreds of years, maybe, couple hundred only, but still, there's a lot to learn from research and academia, particularly with the type of software that we're developing these days.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. So you have been making tools, AI tools for PM from so long, right? So very cliche question, like, do you think like AI will replace product managers? And how the role will evolve?
Okay. Well, I love the second part of the question as well, because I get the first part often, and the second part less often, and I really like the latter. But I'll answer in order. No, not in the short term. I am of the belief, philosophically, that AI may have the capability to replace nearly every part of intellectual work. Eventually, and I wouldn't bet on it being in 5 years or 20, but I know it can happen. It is theoretically possible that it replaces every job. The key thing is, do we want to, and what features we want to leave in, Now, to answer a little bit more realistically of today, product managers are gonna change, but they're not gonna be gone. I think a junior developer is a higher risk than a product manager. But I also think the junior product managers have a bit of a challenge, because what really makes you a valuable product manager is not that you know the frameworks, that you know what an OKR means, how to do a roadmap, or how to measure outcomes. The important thing is that you grow that product sense, that you understand people, that you understand problems, that you know how to interact with engineering folks, things that you learn by doing for the most part. So I do think, and this is a worry that I haven't found an answer really yet, but my worry is more that senior product managers are going to be in very high demand, particularly those that have these skills that I mentioned. Junior PMs have a very tough time getting into the market right now. Very tough time. And I think the only way for those to get out of that tough time is to actually start doing without pay, and not necessarily working for a company as free interns, but what I mean is build your own thing. Now you can. So learn those product skills by building your own product, even if it's something that doesn't have any traction. No, but if you're out of a job and you wanna get into a job, build a job yourself first. And that way you will get that experience that a senior has had that you haven't. Second side, how does the role evolve? It becomes more strategic. And this is really at the core of what I'm doing as well, Nikhil. My core vision is that product thinking is the skill of the future, and that what will be the future's product manager, they may not be called product managers. They may be called product engineers. They may be called product builders. They may be product strategists. I like to think about the future product managers as chief context officers, in that they are the ones that really manage the context of the AI system that are working for building your product, so that that system understands well your personas, their pain points, your vision, your mission. And it's not just that putting a text item there. Nobody's is actually ensuring that we have basically the cursor rules for product build out and managing the corpus of knowledge that is relevant for that. And that means, for example, generating that knowledge, like talking to users, interviewing them, distilling that information, so that you have a good understanding of who your personas are, what are they real, how you empathize with them, no? And so the future that I envision and that I am working day and night for, that I'm betting my career on, is that product managers will be able to live in the cockpit of the company, that they will be in the command chair, that they will be day after day making decisions, thinking hard about difficult problems, and as much as possible, never seeing Jira again, not having to write a document ever, because I think that's such a waste of talent. And so I don't think product manager is particularly not gonna be writing stories, writing PRDs, translating that into tasks. I think it is distilling information. I think it is strategizing. And I think it is curating context so that the whole company can be behind one set of knowledge. Everybody can be in line and brought along for the journey.
Amazing. I think would love to use your tool as well, and see how can we use it to share that across. We can link your tool with all the links that we have, so that our viewers can also try it.
Sounds good. Let's to share
Can't
then
wait to see it.
an ounce for the audience. We are relatively early stage. So we started the company Zentrix in August last year. Our first version came out, or alpha, during November. We launched our public beta on January. Ever since, we've seen a few hundred product teams start using it. And what we help the most with today is going from unstructured data, ideas, PRDs, whatever you have, into clear implementation plans. We believe in dynamic roadmaps that adapt as your team capacity changes, as things finish earlier than expected, as things are delayed. I think that uncertainty is where all product managers live, and what we want is to give them the tools to be comfortable living in that fog of war. And so, if anybody listening to this is curious, of course, feel free to use it, but furthermore, feel free to reach out. This is an area that interests me deeply, and I would love to talk to anybody that has given some thought about this space as well. So, my LinkedIn probably will be there as well. Feel free to connect, mention that you come from as well from this conversation, and we can have an amazing follow-up.
Before we end up, few fun questions to you. Very, very quick. Maybe we can have some type of rapid fire kind of thing. Okay, so let's move forward. Would you rather trust an AI assistant to write your user stories or run your own stand-up?
My user stories, hands down. But because, if I'm not for the stand-up, who's going to make morning dad jokes for the team, Uh, I do believe that a lot of the stand-up can be prepared and a lot of it can be pre-done by AI, but you do need human contact, right? So stand-ups can now maybe just finally be really 15 minutes, but no, I wouldn't give up my touch points with the team.
Okay. So let's say, your AI assistant says something which your AI assistant disagrees with you. So who will win? Either you or your AI assistant?
Probably neither, no? I will use what the AI assistant has said to use critical thinking on my original bias, and I will use my thinking to criticize and refine what the AI has said, no? Key comes from collaboration and using the best of each. And then maybe I would also say, depends on the model. Maybe if it's O3, I would believe it more. If it's just, for O, I would dismiss it. But good question. Always, be a critical thinker. Question your own thoughts and theirs.
Makes sense. Which AI trend do you think should quickly disappear?
Well, there's one that I absolutely hate, and you may in line with me. I hope so. But is all of these companies selling agents as virtual employees, saying that like, hire Ella, it's your marketing worker that doesn't ask for a salary raise, that doesn't stop for meals. Please, like the comparison is not one to one. It is disingenuous. A customer should distrust that type of messaging, and it's also so hurtful. Imagine that the person reading that is somebody that has been laid off from a position like that. It's just so unempathetic. And I understand why people do it to get headlines. Assembly AI started with it, those ads in San Francisco. I find them disgusting. And I really hope that trend will not continue and that people will push against it.
Yeah. Amazing. What's the one AI buzzword that you hate to hear about?
I mean, it is pretty common, but I do feel that AI agents is overused. Everybody calls everything an AI agent. But also, prompt engineering libraries. All of these like former crypto YouTubers that now sell you 100 prompt library that will change your life. So maybe either, AI agents is a thing, no? It's a real thing that maybe started with the baby AGI back in 2 years ago. But now everything is an AI agent, no? And so that is definitely overused, those keywords.
Yeah. So next is like AI dashboards, AI evaluation dashboards. Do you think it's generously helpful or just modern art to pretend to understand that?
I mean, there's a little bit of both, and it really depends on the product work that you've done to design what you're evaluating. Because if anything, I think it can be like modern art in like there's some modern art that gives you a lot of information with just a few lines, like cubic designs, no, in which you see a picture of, but this is a little bit less modern, but if you see a Picasso, there's like not only the painting itself, but so much emotion and history and a lot of layers of information that is given to you in just one image. So in that sense, it can be like modern art. It can also be like the modern art that nobody understands, that is just a log on top of a toilet. And just like, there is a lot of things here and I understand none of them. So I would say that the modern art parallel is good in that it can be really expressive and it can also be a waste of time and resources. It has to be done well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think now we are now coming into this podcast. I think had a fantastic hours with you. We going through the conversational. It was great hearing your thoughts. Thanks George for taking time out from a busy schedule. Thanks a lot. Really love the conversation. I hope the viewers also would have loved it. Thanks a lot. Any ending thoughts that you have that you want to share?
Well, mostly thank you for having me as well. I enjoyed it greatly. The time has flown by. I think those questions were amazing. I would love to chat more again next time. And for everybody listening, if you are starting up, don't lose the fear. And as we both have been saying, get on and try everything, break it. If you're already an expert, I hope that you learned something. If you work in product, I hope that you're interested on learning more about Zentrix, and feel free to reach out. And for everybody, please just go build amazing things and have loads of fun doing it, because we have the opportunity now to decide how to better spend our time now that we can outsource more of our work. Let's just be conscious to what we leave for AIs to do and what we keep ourselves. Let's make sure that we keep things human and that we don't automate life away.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, George. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. See you there next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil.
Bye.